Australia holds places so feared that early European settlers named them after the devil himself, and long before those settlers arrived, First Nations communities already treated the same ground as dangerous, forbidden, or spiritually charged. This list blends documented history, geology, and traditional knowledge from the communities who know these places best. Some of these places have swallowed travelers whole, with search parties finding nothing but shoes, water bottles, or nothing at all. Others carry warnings passed down for tens of thousands of years. Stories about serpents, curses, and creatures that live beneath still water. Today we are counting down 10 of the most feared places across this continent. Real locations you can visit right now, each one carrying a reputation dark enough that locals still lower their voices when they talk about it. Some of these places killed people within living memory. Others have simply never let go of the fear attached to their name. Stick around for number 1, because the story behind it has unsettled scientists as much as it has unsettled everyone else. A few of these places are protected by law today, but most were protected far longer simply because people respected the warning. Before we get into the list, if strange corners of Australia interest you, this channel covers them every week, so consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you do not miss the next one. It helps more than you would think. Now, number 10. Number 10. Kata Tjuta, Northern Territory. Most visitors know the smaller domes of Kata Tjuta as a quieter cousin to Uluru, 36 rounded red rock formations rising out of the central desert, about 25 miles west of its more famous neighbour. But among the Anangu people, the traditional owners of this land, certain gorges within Kata Tjuta are considered so spiritually dangerous that specific stories about them are restricted even within the community, shared only with initiated men who have earned the right to hear them. These restrictions come from community protocol, not government law. One of the central figures tied to this place is Wanumbi, a snake being said to live in a permanent waterhole at the top of Wolfe Gorge, a spirit powerful enough to summon storms if disturbed or disrespected. Rangers and traditional owners have asked visitors for decades to stay on marked paths through certain valleys, not because of any physical hazard like a cliff edge or loose rock, but because the ground itself is considered unsafe for anyone without the cultural knowledge to walk it correctly. Photography is restricted in specific areas for the same reason. Even seasoned park rangers describe an instinct to lower their voices once they walk past certain rock walls, an instinct they cannot fully explain but have learned not to ignore. Geologists will tell you Kata Tjuta formed from a conglomerate of gravel, boulders, and mud, cemented together roughly 500 million years ago, then slowly exposed as softer, surrounding rock eroded away over unimaginable stretches of time. That explanation satisfies the rock's origin. It does nothing to explain why a place this remote, this quiet, has held onto a reputation for danger that has outlasted colonization, tourism, and every attempt to explain it away. Faint paths still predate the road nearby. Number 9. Boobera Lagoon, New South Wales. Sitting near the town of Boggabilla, close to the Queensland border, Boobera Lagoon looks at first glance like an unremarkable freshwater billabong fed by the McIntyre River. But for the Kamilaroi and Githable people, this lagoon is one of the most dangerous bodies of water in the country, home to a being called the Kuria, a giant creature described as part crocodile and part serpent that is said to have carved out the lagoon itself while dragging its massive body across the landscape. Traditional law forbids swimming in Boobera Lagoon, a warning that has been passed down for generations and still holds today, reinforced by Aboriginal elders who have spoken publicly and repeatedly against recreational use of the water. Local fishing guides still steer clear of the lagoon centre. In the 20th century, local water skiing clubs pushed to develop the lagoon for sport, triggering a decades-long land rights and cultural heritage dispute that eventually reached the New South Wales Land and Environment Court. The case became one of the clearest examples in Australian legal history of a spiritual belief being weighed directly against a recreational development proposal, and in the end, cultural heritage protections held. Multiple drownings have occurred in the lagoon over the years, feeding the belief that the Kuria still claims anyone foolish enough to enter its water. Whether you read that as coincidence or something else, Boobera Lagoon remains one of the only places in Australia where a creature from oral tradition has directly shaped modern water safety policy. Number 8. The Devil's Coach House, Genelin Caves, New South Wales. Jenolan sits roughly 3 hours west of Sydney in the Blue Mountains, home to the oldest discovered cave system on Earth, dated to around 340 million years old. Its most feared chamber carries the name Devil's Coach House, an enormous natural archway large enough that early explorers described riding horses straight through it, with a ceiling that soars 60 meters above the cave floor in places. The chamber floor drops sharply, where lanterns rarely reached. Local Gundungura people knew the caves as Bainumea, meaning dark places, and treated the deeper chambers with the same caution European settlers would later apply. Once bushranger James McKeown began using the cave system as a hideout in the 1830s, evading capture for years inside passages so complex that pursuing police reportedly refused to follow him past the entrance chamber. The name Devil's Coach House stuck once colonial visitors began describing the constant cold wind that rushes through the archway, a wind strong enough to extinguish lanterns, caused by a temperature and pressure difference between the cave's interior and the outside air. Human remains, dating back thousands of years, have been recovered from deeper sections of the cave system, and at least one 19th century visitor is documented to have died after falling from a ledge inside the chamber during an early unguided exploration. Cave guides still point out the exact ledge during tours, treating the story as a safety lesson as much as folklore. Today, the cave is lit and mapped for tourism, but guides still describe the acoustics inside the coach house, a natural echo chamber where every footstep and every whisper returns distorted, as the reason the name has never worn off. Number 7. Wolfe Creek Crater, Western Australia. Known to the Jaru and Jaru people as Kundimalal, this is the second largest meteorite crater on the planet, where fragments of the original meteorite have actually been recovered. A nearly perfect circle, almost 900 meters across, sitting in one of the most isolated stretches of the Great Sandy Desert. Traditional stories describe the crater as the spot where a rainbow serpent emerged from beneath the earth, and generations of Jaru people avoided camping directly inside the crater rim, treating the site as spiritually significant rather than a place for everyday use. Some accounts describe the crater rim as a boundary not crossed after dark. The crater rim height varies by only a few meters all around. European surveyors did not even document the crater until 1947, when a pilot on an aerial survey flight spotted the perfect circle from the air and reported it as an impossible landscape feature. Formal protection of the site took years after confirmation, partly because of how difficult it remained to reach. Scientific dating places the actual impact at somewhere between 120,000 and 850,000 years ago, based on erosion modeling of the crater walls. Since the extreme desert environment makes more precise dating difficult, the crater's remoteness is itself part of its reputation, sitting more than 150 kilometers from the nearest town along a dirt track that becomes impassable during the wet season, meaning anyone who runs into trouble out there is largely on their own. Several hikers and campers have gone missing in the surrounding desert over the decades. Disappearances usually attributed to the brutal heat and disorientating flatness of the landscape, rather than anything else, though that explanation has never fully quieted the older warning that the ground inside the crater was never meant to be walked on carelessly. Number 6. Devil's Pool, Babinda Boulders, Queensland. Tucked into the rainforest south of Cairns, Babinda Boulders looks like a postcard. Granite boulders framing a clear rushing creek beneath a canopy of tropical rainforest. But a roped-off section downstream carries the name Devil's Pool for a documented reason. At least 17 deaths recorded since the 1950s, almost all of them young men who ignored the barriers. Local Yidinji tradition explains the danger through the story of Ulana, a woman promised to an elder of her clan who fell in love instead with a visiting warrior named Daiga. When the two were separated by force, Ulana is said to have thrown herself into the rushing water, cursing the pool to claim young men in her grief for as long as the water flowed. Local families still leave offerings near the boulders on drowning anniversaries. Warning signs now track confirmed past incidents at the site. What makes Devil's Pool unusual is how closely the folklore lines up with the physical danger. Underneath the visible boulders lies a labyrinth of submerged rock channels and hidden undertows, creating currents strong enough to pull a swimmer under and trap them beneath the surface without warning, even when the water above looks calm. Queensland Park authorities eventually installed permanent fencing, warning signage in multiple languages, and a dedicated memorial after the death toll kept climbing despite every precaution, yet people still occasionally climb past the barriers. Local rescue volunteers say the pool's calm surface is exactly what makes it dangerous. Search and rescue teams describe the same pattern nearly every time. A swimmer disappearing in seconds in water that looked completely safe just moments before, in a place a community has been warning people away from for longer than any government sign has existed. Number 5. Split Rock, Laura, Queensland. Cape York's Quincan country holds one of the largest and oldest galleries of rock art on the planet, with paintings across hundreds of sandstone shelters dated by some researchers to as far back as 30,000 years. Among the thousands of figures painted across these walls are the Quincans themselves, spirit beings central to Aboriginal belief in the region, split into two very different types. The Tamara are described as tall, thin, benevolent spirits, while the Imjim are short, stocky, and feared, said to snatch children who wander too far from camp and to punish anyone who breaks traditional law. Parents in the region reportedly still invoke the Imjim by name as a caution for children who stray from the group during bushwalks. Elders in the region have described the Imjim paintings as more than decoration, treating certain shelters as places where the spirits themselves are considered present, not just represented. Archaeologists studying the site have noted the deliberate placement of the most unsettling Imjim figures near cave entrances and narrow passages, positions that would have made them the first thing anyone saw entering the shelter, whether that placement was meant as protection, warning, or both. Similar figure placements appear at other northern rock art sites nearby. Pigments here trace back to ochre, sourced kilometers away. The site earned UNESCO tentative World Heritage status recognition for its cultural significance, and the local Aboriginal corporation now manages visitor access specifically to protect both the fragile pigment artwork and the spiritual weight the community still attaches to these shelters. Visitors describe an unmistakable shift in atmosphere, walking into the deeper galleries, a stillness that has nothing to do with temperature, in a landscape where the paintings were never meant to be simply looked at, but respected. Number 4. Hanging Rock, Victoria. Rising abruptly out of otherwise flat farmland north of Melbourne, Hanging Rock is a volcanic formation of jagged rock towers formed roughly 6 million years ago when thick lava cooled and cracked into the maze of boulders, crevices, and narrow passages that make up the summit today. The Wurundjeri and Dja Dja Wurrung people, whose land this is, held ceremonies at the rock but treated its upper reaches with caution, aware of how easily the maze, like rock formations at the top, could disorient even an experienced traveller. Temperatures shift noticeably between boulders meters apart. That disorientation has a documented history. Police records describe search efforts stretching across multiple days for visitors who wandered only a short distance from marked trails. Multiple visitors have gone missing on the rock over the past century, and search parties have described the difficulty of navigating the summit's narrow gaps and unstable boulders, even in daylight, since the formation genuinely confuses a person's sense of direction once they climb past the lower paths. The site gained global attention after a 1967 novel used it as the setting for a fictional disappearance, a story so effectively told that many readers still believe the events described in it actually happened, despite it being entirely a work of fiction. What is not fiction is the rock's documented magnetic anomaly, caused by its volcanic mineral composition, strong enough to affect compass readings near the summit, a detail park rangers still mention to hikers today. Between the genuine missing person history, the maze-like terrain, and a magnetic field that throws off basic navigation tools, Hanging Rock earned its unsettling reputation the old-fashioned way, through incidents that happened to real people long before any story was written about it. Number 3. Devil's Kitchen, Tasman Peninsula, Tasmania. Along the wild southeastern coastline of Tasmania sits a series of sea-formed chasms carved into towering dolerite cliffs, and the most feared of them earned the name Devil's Kitchen, a sheer-sided gorge where the Southern Ocean funnels violently into a narrow crevice more than 60 meters deep. The chasm was originally a sea cave until its roof collapsed sometime in the 19th century, and locals at the time reportedly described the resulting sound, waves crashing and echoing up through the newly exposed gorge, as sounding like something being cooked alive far below the surface, which is how the name took hold. A nearby formation, Tasman's Arch, has collapsed further in recent decades. Wind through the chasm can reportedly knock a person off balance. During the convict era, the nearby Port Arthur penal settlement used the Tasman Peninsula's brutal coastal geography as a natural prison wall, since the cliffs, chasms, and violent surf made escape by land or sea almost impossible for anyone attempting to flee. Convict records from the period describe prisoners drowning in these very waters during escape attempts, their bodies rarely recovered from the churning gorge systems along this stretch of coast. Local historians note that guards themselves treated the chasm with genuine unease, aware the same currents could just as easily claim one of their own. Today, guardrails keep visitors well back from the edge of Devil's Kitchen after several falls and at least one confirmed death in more recent decades, incidents almost always caused by people underestimating how unstable the cliff edge becomes in wet or windy conditions. Standing at the rail, watching the ocean force itself violently through a gap barely wide enough to fit a small boat, it is not difficult to understand why 19th century settlers reached for the devil to describe what they were looking at. Number 2. The Bunyip Swamps, Victoria. Few Australian legends are as well known internationally as the Bunyip, a creature said to lurk in swamps, billabongs, and waterholes across the continent, and few places carry that legend more literally than the small Victorian town actually named Bunyip, roughly 70 kilometres southeast of Melbourne. The surrounding wetlands were described by early settlers as home to a large, aggressive creature that bellowed at night and dragged livestock beneath the water, warnings that closely echoed much older stories told by Aboriginal communities across the region about dangerous beings living in specific waterholes, stories that predate European arrival by thousands of years. Farmers here still report livestock avoiding certain waterholes. In 1845, a bizarre skull was recovered from the Murrumbidgee River and put on public display in Sydney, generating genuine newspaper coverage and public excitement after being labelled a possible Bunyip skull, before naturalists eventually identified it as a deformed foal skeleton. The correction barely slowed public fascination, and newspapers kept reporting fresh Bunyip sightings for decades afterward. That single incident cemented the Bunyip firmly in the national imagination, but it was the pattern of consistent, independent descriptions from Aboriginal groups across enormously distant parts of the country, groups with no contact with one another, describing broadly similar creatures in similar habitats that gave the legend its staying power among serious folklorists. The genuinely dangerous wetlands surrounding modern-day Bunyip, including boggy ground capable of swallowing livestock and even vehicles without warning, only reinforced the reputation over time. Whatever explains the original sightings, whether misidentified seals that occasionally wander inland along river systems, escaped exotic animals, or something else entirely, an entire small rural farming town still carries that creature's name on its municipal signage today. Number 1. Karlu Karlu, known officially as Devil's Marbles, Northern Territory. Scattered across a wide, shallow valley south of Tennant Creek sit hundreds of massive granite boulders, some balanced so precisely on top of one another that they appear ready to topple at the slightest touch, despite weighing many tons each. Geologists explain the formation through a slow process called spheroidal weathering. Granite that cooled underground roughly 1.7 billion years ago, cracked into blocks along natural fault lines, then was gradually rounded by water and wind erosion as the surrounding softer rock eroded away over an almost incomprehensible stretch of time. That scientific explanation did nothing to stop 19th century European surveyors from naming the site after the devil, struck by how genuinely unnatural the balanced boulders looked against the flat surrounding desert. For the Warramungu people, the traditional owners, the boulders hold a very different meaning, described in local tradition as the eggs of the rainbow serpent, a creation being whose movements are said to have shaped the surrounding landscape itself. Ceremonies tied to this site are still conducted today by the community. Sound is said to carry unusually far across the valley. The site was formally handed back to Aboriginal ownership in 2008 after a long native title process, and it remains an active, living, sacred site rather than a historical curiosity, with certain areas still restricted from general access out of respect for ongoing ceremony. Even the site's official signage now carries both names side by side, colonial label and living sacred name, sharing the same space. Visitors describe the boulders as strangely disorienting at sunset, when the deepening red light makes the rounded shapes seem to shift and breathe against the darkening sky, an optical effect caused entirely by iron oxide in the granite catching the fading light. 10 places, 1 continent, and 1 honest observation running through every single one of them, the fear rarely comes from nothing. Somewhere underneath every legend on this list sits a real cliff edge, a real current, a real disappearance, or thousands of years of a community's accumulated knowledge about ground that deserves to be treated with respect. That closing thought is really the through line connecting all 10 of these places. Long before any of them earned a reputation for being cursed, haunted, or devil-touched, someone already knew the specific danger hiding in that exact spot. Whether that knowledge came from a drowning, a disappearance, or tens of thousands of years of oral tradition passed carefully from one generation to the next, modern science can explain the mechanics behind almost every one of these locations. The currents, the magnetic anomalies, the erosion patterns, the geology. What it cannot fully explain is how consistently the fear lined up with the actual danger long before anyone had the tools to measure it.